Kia ora, welcome to Shared Lunch, brought to you by Sharesies. My name is Dan Brunskill. Today on Shared Lunch, we're joined by Damian Spring, CEO of Santana Minerals, to talk about their new listing on the NZX, the new gold mine near Queenstown, and the government's fast-track legislation, and more. But before we get started, here's some important information.
Investing involves risk. You might lose the money you start with. We recommend talking to a licensed financial advisor. We also recommend reading product disclosure documents before deciding to invest. Everything you're about to see and hear is current at the time of recording.
Damian, thank you for coming on the show.
Glad to be here.
Busy week for you?
Absolutely.
Did you, you're just newly listed on the NZX, so did you get to ring the bell?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, actually, our founding director of Matakanui Gold, and New Zealand subsidiary, Kim Bunting, got that privilege. He was the guy who drove the discovery, so he rang it first, and the whole team got their hands on the.
I wanted to ask you about the discoveries because they have interesting names. I think the one we're talking about is called Rise and Shine. Another one's called Come in Time.
Yep.
And then there's Shrek and Shrek East, which I don't know why it wasn't Shrek 2, my personal favourite. But where do you come up with these names?
Well, the first two are historic names. They're from the 1860s through the 1920s. They were mined. So yeah, Rise and Shine, just good old prospectors' names from that era. And I guess Shrek's is acknowledgement of the big woolly sheep that was found 20 years ago this year.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is that from the same region?
From Bendigo Station, where
it.
we're one of it. Half the land that we lie on is Bendigo, and the other half's out. Yeah.
Are you still looking for new discoveries?
Absolutely. It's a very prospective area, and continuing to explore.
Tell us, what is this discovery? What have you found? Why are you excited about it?
Look, it's 2.5 million ounces at a grade of 2.1 grams per tonne, or parts per million. It's on the world scale that is right up there. There's not many other undeveloped new discoveries of that order in the world right now, and we're really excited about it. I was working in the area, or living in the area really, and when the opportunity came on board, came up, I knew about the project and took the opportunity with both hands.
So how long have you been looking at this? You said it's a sort of historical gold area.
Yeah, well, that's how we find things, is look where the old timers were. But really, the discovery hole was made in 2021, where after prospecting in the valleys, Santana Minerals bought the project off Matakanui Gold, funded $7 million of exploration, and James Bond hole 007 drilled 40 metres at 2 grams per tonne. So they followed it up with obviously a lot more drilling. We've drilled over 300 holes now across the project, and it's just turned into a world-class deposit.
So 007, the 7th hole you dug.
Correct.
Hit gold.
Yes.
That's good. Okay, and the technical terms about how much gold there is in the ground may be lost on me and listeners, but it's a good.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess the reason we put out our scoping study early this year was to actually put some more palatable metrics around it, in terms, particularly on the financial side of things. So, yeah, it's a fantastic project. It's going to deliver $4.4 billion over 10 years on what we know at that point in time was half the resource, and deliver potentially 60% of that value in the ground to New Zealanders, either through taxes, royalties, or dividends to our current existing 40% New Zealand-based shareholders, but we hope to grow with our recent listing yesterday.
Of course, congratulations. Talk to me about that, because you're an Australian registered company, ASX listed, people on Sharesies and professional traders can buy and sell on the ASX. What made you want to come over to the NZX and set up a secondary listing here? What's the benefit of doing so?
Oh, look, it's demonstrating our intent. It is a New Zealand discovery. It will be developed and mined predominantly by New Zealanders for themselves and for their families and the community. I guess in terms of why specifically on the NZX, it is give the ability for those investors, whether retail or institutional, to trade in New Zealand currency without worrying about that forex issue. And ultimately, when we do start declaring dividends, that hopefully we can do it in New Zealand dollars and get whatever franking credits are available at that point in time.
You said about 40% of your register are New Zealanders. Do you expect that to change and shift and grow potentially?
Oh, look, there is that expectation. but ultimately it gives us two platforms on which to grow the company here in New Zealand and, of course, the ASX. And we'll be looking for a final investment decision sometime next year, which we'll also be looking to capital raise to build the mine.
Of course. How much do you think you will need to raise?
Well, our scoping study indicated about $250 million New Zealand, and we're looking at a number of options, as you would expect, over the coming months to see how we're going to raise that money.
And when you say options, you mean maybe a mix of raising capital, debt?
Debt and equity predominantly, yes, correct.
Have you taken on any sort of, obviously on the share market, so investors can come along. Have you taken on any big institutional investors for this project? Or
yeah, it's been through the Santana Gold. They were well backed originally by high net worths in New Zealand. They've remained loyal to the company through the Santana acquiring Santana Gold. So right now, in terms of the ASX, we really only have one institutional investor, and that's Regal. They're number one, and the rest are still held predominantly by high net worths. So look, as we definitely move into that construction phase, we expect that institutional buying will be there.
So it sounds like Santana's quite focused on New Zealand and this project in particular. Do you have other projects going on? Is this one of many mines? What else do you do?
No, well, so Santana is essentially an exploration company now looking to be a development company and ultimately a gold producer. So yes, we do have a couple of projects, one in Mexico that we're divesting, and also one in Cambodia, which we're just have a partner there who's earning an interest in that, doing all the work. So we'll just sit there quietly and let them do the work and hopefully grow that project on its own right. But so, yeah, we're really focused on the Bendigo Ophir Gold project. That's our number one focus.
So you've previously been exploration firm. Is this your first foray into actually pulling the gold out of the ground?
In terms of the company, Santana, absolutely, but it was spun out of a previous deal about 10 years ago in Mexico. So the assets that were not required for that transaction were put into Santana. And as the way of our industry, we have these junior explorers who are out there looking at the ground, first on the ground, to see if they can make a discovery, and ultimately, if they do make a discovery, transition to a developer or get picked up by an existing producer. So I guess really, as a company, we're new, but as a team, as a people, we're very experienced. Peter Cook, our non-executive chairman, he's a very successful builder of mines and mining companies. And one of note was Westgold. That's now well in excess of $1 billion market cap, and a number of others. So, and my team that I've selected over the last 6 months to be on the ground down there have all got their extensive careers in mining, both in Australia and New Zealand. And particularly with their own experiences in New Zealand, they've already got that New Zealand context.
Can I go back to something you said earlier? You said the way to find gold is look where the old timers looked. What has changed between now and then? I'm guessing it's technological advance. That means you can get the gold that they maybe knew was there but didn't pull up.
Well, there's a couple of things. There's the grade. They were mining 30 grams per tonne as a minimum, that ounce dirt, as we call it. So we're mining potentially 2.5, probably a little bit higher initially, but maybe up to 5 grams
So that's
per
how
tonne.
much gold is in each bit of dirt.
Yeah.
Right. So they were getting much higher numbers.
Of the rock that actually contains the gold. There's a lot of rock that we have to move to expose that rock, and then we process it. So there's the grade, and then there's knowledge and science that's developed over the 150 years, and probably longer actually, but the point now that we really start to understand the little bit of clues that the ground gives us. And of course, we've got the experience of Macraes. Macraes Gold Mine near Dunedin, owned by Oceana Gold. They've been operating for now 34 years and produced over 5 million ounces. Very similar geometry and geology, slight differences in grade and metallurgy to our advantage. But there's a lot of learnings, and that one of them was they had these northerly trends on their deposits, which helped drive that discovery hole, 007.
So that gives you some confidence about what you found and how you can dig it up.
Yeah, that's our bread and butter.
Your pitch to investors say this project could produce, between 1.1 million of ounces of gold, and that could mean 1.1 billion to $2 billion of net profits over 10 years. But a lot of that depends on the gold price. Talk to me about the outlook for the gold price. How do you think about that? Because it's quite high at the moment, right?
It is quite high. Our scoping study was actually done on a conservative long-term gold price of $1,650 US or 2,700 Kiwi. Even on that metric, produced that, as you say, $1 billion net profit after tax. But going forward, yes, we're definitely at record pricing right now for gold. Obviously, as a gold miner, it's pleasing to see and definitely drives a lot of interest. Where it ends up is beyond our control. Okay. I can definitely say that because it's an international commodity that's well traded. What we have to do is we get our project up, get our capital, get our project up, manage our bottom line, our costs, and ensure that there is a margin there. And look, at almost $2,500 Kiwi an ounce, there's plenty of margin.
And yeah, gold prices tend to, yeah. What is the lowest it can go before you have to pull the plug on the project? Do you have a gold price in your head that if it gets to that, you're in trouble?
Oh, look, it's well below 2,700.
Okay.
Obviously, that was a conservative pricing, and we still made a profit.
Because what is it now? 3.9?
I think it was over 4,000 this
over
week.
4,000. Wow.
So back over that price. So it's, I guess it's a commodity that is complex. It's well traded. It goes up when it goes up, and it goes down when it goes down. And you can pick the drivers for that. I guess right now it's central bank buying, but also a little bit of uncertainty in the international geopolitical scene as well as financials. But look, we'll take whatever the price is at the time we start producing, and that's what it'll be.
So you've scoped the project at a price of 2,700, you said.
Yes,
so it's
right.
Profitable at 2,700.
Absolutely, $1 billion.
Okay, that's the $1 billion, and then the $2 billion is at the current price
At 3,900, which was the spot back in April when we released that report.
Very interesting. In terms of what drives the price, you just referenced central bank buying there. What about just things like in-tech components and jewellery and what we'd call like practical uses? Does that drive the price much, or is it all about the store of value?
Oh, look, no doubt. I'm not much of a student on that gold pricing. I'm a mining engineer by trade. But absolutely, I think the technological applications are a big part of it. I think, there's a little bit of gold in everybody's smartphone, a very small amount, I think less than $10, but it is something. And I don't know how many smartphones are in the world, but I think there is a lot.
I respect you're not the gold expert. I'm going to ask one more question, because this is a retail investor show, and that is gold suddenly has a competitor in being store of value, Bitcoin, which people love and call it digital gold. How do you think about that? Are you worried that Bitcoin is going to displace gold?
Not really.
Not really.
I don't know much about cryptocurrencies. I think people like the idea of a physical store of wealth. And of course, it does create its own physical industry. We're going to have 250 direct jobs at our operation down in Central Otago. That'll spawn at least 3 other jobs for every full-time job. So it'll be close to 1,000 new jobs in the Central Otago region. So that's, I guess, widespread, real economic driving activity versus, crypto. I don't know anything about it.
You don't want to pick a fight today. I guess one has a longer history, I suppose.
It's exactly millennia long.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned earlier that the people working on this mine will be New Zealanders. I've also heard that our workforce is limited there, and people who've been involved in mining have gone overseas because there haven't been that many projects. Talk to me about the workforce that's available, and where do you think it will come from?
Oh, look, there's 3 key areas I think our workforce will come from. They'll be like me. They've been there a long time. They've chosen to live in Central Otago, maintain their links to the industry. I was lucky enough to work predominantly remote, had a cell phone, had internet, international airport, so I could jump on a plane or drive to any of my clients' mines. There'll be others who are fly in, fly out, actually going to operate at mines rather than work remote out of that area. There'll be Kiwis and others who are working fly in, fly out in Western Australia, enjoying the money, but 2 weeks or 1 week away from their family every 3 weeks puts a toll on things. So they may be looking to change their lifestyle, stay in the game that they love being a part of, and look to relocate. And of course, there'll be people who want to get a bit of this new industry called gold mining in Central Otago, who again are already there and just want to change jobs and and join us.
So you could imagine some of the Kiwis who are mining in Australia coming back to work on a New Zealand project?
Absolutely. I know people who are aware of this project and aware of their mates already in the industry over there to text them, hey, when you're coming back.
Yeah. Your mine is not yet consented, correct?
No.
And you're hoping to be part of this new government fast-track legislation that could speed up that whole process. It's currently making its way through Parliament. Do you expect to be one of the projects that is listed in the Schedule A, Schedule B, that is automatically included in the legislation?
Look, we have applied for Schedule 2A. We haven't made a much deal about it because, as you say, the bill's still going through Parliament. It's actually at the Environment Select Committee stage, and they're due to report back in a few months' time. On the back of that, the second reading, the bill will have its second reading in Parliament, and we'll hopefully see what happens with that Schedule 2A or Schedule 2B.
Right. The bill's relatively controversial, one of the most controversial things the government's doing at the moment. Do you have a backup plan for if it doesn't make it or if it gets substantially changed?
Well, the fast track approval bill is actually my plan B. My plan A, given my background working for another ASX company that is 100% New Zealand, Bathurst Resources, was to follow the Resource Management Act and submit our applications at the end of this year. So we've been working since I've joined the company at the start of last year to gather the information, particularly around our environmental baseline, overlay that with our mining plans, come up with a mitigation or offsetting or compensation as allowed for under the RMA, and put the application at the end of this year. So look, this plan B that I've called it, the fast track approvals bill, has popped up. We'll certainly take full advantage of it. As you know, it's an overarching piece of legislation, pulls in 6 acts, including the RMA. The requirements under those individual 6 acts, I think of which 4 we need permissions from, those requirements still stand. So we still have to follow the processes under the RMA to mitigate our effects and continue consultation, which is a big part of what we do, talking to our community, talking to our neighbours, talking to mana whenua. And we expect that when we do put our application in at the end of this year or early next year, that we've done it with the best of our ability at that point in time.
So am I understanding there that the application you're submitting and the requirements you will face are the same under each process, just one's faster?
Yeah, like I guess fast track approvals bill is really a one-stop shop. You know, it's those 6 acts. We put one application to cover all the permissions under those 6 acts, 4 of the 6 acts that we need those permissions. As we understand it with the current version, the expert panel will have 6 months to make a recommendation to the Minister, and then the Minister has that decision to grant or otherwise those conditions.
So what's the timeline under Plan A?
Oh, look, part of our submission to the Environment Select Committee was that the Plan A through the normal RMA process is what we call a 2-step process. We put you do all your consultation, put your application in, publicly notified. Sometime months after that, you get a public hearing. Lots of public, anyone in the public can make a submission on it. The commissioners review all the evidence and then confirm or otherwise the conditions of the consent or decline it for whatever reason. Then, because of the way it works over the last 30 years of the Act, 33 years of the Act, there's options to go to the Environment Court to appeal aspects where we will start again. So that does push the timeline out, and I guess it is a risk for us. You know, we don't want to be sitting around fighting things out in court. Where my goal always was to do a very good job on the science first, and then the consultation, understanding people's issues, and at least giving them the opportunity to review our science and our mitigation before we put that application in.
The Resources Minister, Shane Jones, has said that one of the big problems mining industry faces in New Zealand is social licence, this idea that maybe the New Zealand public doesn't trust you necessarily. How do you go about winning the trust of New Zealanders to say, we can be trusted with this piece of the environment, we'll look after it, we'll look after our neighbours? Convince us.
The idea of social licence is probably decades old. I've been aware of it for a long time. I've heard it being described in Patagonia, where I've also worked for a TSX listed company, that we had to make it very clear it's not a piece of paper that we get, here's our social licence. It is a case of talking to people, introducing yourself if you haven't met them before, letting them know the background. And certainly in my case, I'm a local. I've lived in Arrowtown 20 years, so the project's now depending on with bad traffic up to the project. So we're here for the long term. We're not an overseas company here to take the profit, take the profits and disappear again. So it's about ensuring we're following the letter of the law at the RMA as it stands today, and then whatever it is under the Fast Track Approvals Bill, that we're doing our work to the highest possible standard in terms of mining on the international scene, not just in New Zealand, and that we listen as best as we can and take on as best as we can those concerns for our proposal, but also highlight the benefits of our project, the jobs creation, the service industry that we've built up, what we call the continued sustainable economic development of Otago in particular, that started in 1860 with the discovery of gold.
Well, what are the environmental impacts of the project? Obviously, you dig a big hole in the ground. What else happens?
Oh, look, the main concerns are, I think, around water, a little bit of dust, traffic. It's a fairly quite low population area. And flora and fauna. So those are all things that we've spent a couple of $1 million already understanding what's out there. When a project of our scale comes into an area that's already sort of well known, we actually take the level of scientific understanding a couple of orders of magnitude up. We've had I had one day this year where I called it the Peak Ecologist Day. We had about a dozen people on site, and we've only got a dozen employees, a dozen ecologists on site, looking at invertebrates, lizards, taramia, pests, all sorts of things to really get a handle on what's out there. So look, it's one of our key things to get this project going.
The actual place you're mining is farmland, though, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so presumably not too many lizards?
Oh, look, the whole of Otago's got lizards,
okay.
And it's well known. So, look, it is sheep and beef country. It's hill country. It's not flats. So, yeah, look, it's. I don't want to say it's degraded. It is what it is. Whatever remnants of the original native ecology are there, that's one of the things we've focused on, trying to understand that. Also, the grasses and the other introduced species into the land. We expect that part of our application under the RMA and Fast Track Bill will be to demonstrate a no net loss to the environment and potentially a net gain. Okay. So pest control, eliminating a lot of pests over a large, hundreds of hectares of land, it will be a big plus, and as well trying to preserve what we do find there.
How supportive for this project is having a government that is taking a more pro-mining stance than it has previously?
Oh, I think it's positive. I think it's the world we live in. Mining, everything we have is either grown or mined, nothing in between. All right. So I think one of the moments for me this year with the turnaround in mining was a debate I watched on parliamentary TV between five, I think, of the six major parties in Parliament debating the merits or otherwise of mining, and that's something I would not have seen even a year ago. So the fact that the three leaders of the coalition party were debating it, and a couple of the opposition parties were debating it either for, against or neutral, was a positive thing.
With the government, they're the ones who get to decide what goes in that Schedule 2A you're talking about. Have you met with them and made your case?
Oh, look, the process it's pretty remote. You fill out a form and it goes online, and they need to do what they need to do. They come back through official channels to ask follow-up questions. So that's that process, where it sits with the people who run that process. Other than that, yes, we've had Minister Jones on site to show him, give him a sense of, hey, this is what we're about, and this is the area we're in. So he's got a physical experience of what we're proposing, rather than something that's esoteric. And of course, we've hosted him in Perth. Two of my directors, including our chair, live in Perth, so he was hosted there to understand the Australian mining scene, including meeting with the current or former consulate for Western Australia.
And you were planning this project, obviously, long before the new government came in, so you obviously thought it was possible. Yeah,
look, being local, I understood the potential change in the political scene, but I didn't highlight that to the board. There's, at the time there was two Kiwis on the board anyway. So I was quite prepared to continue with the RMA under the previous government. I think this project's of such national significance that it's the opportunity to bring in primary export dollars, that with the post-COVID economy that we've been left with, that it was a real chance of being part of that, even the previous government's ticket to getting back in the black.
You said that you'll need to raise capital to do the development. I think you said 250 million? And you sort of looking at $1 to $2 billion of net profit over the next 10 years. What year would the development turn cash flow positive if everything goes to plan?
So based on our scoping study, that's all those numbers you've quoted, and we've got a pre-feasibility coming out towards the end of the year that'll update all that and hopefully grow the size of the project somewhat. But in short, the answer is 1 year after we start pouring gold, we've paid back all our capital.
Okay. And 1 year after you start pulling gold it would be what year? And I guess it depends when you get the consent.
Well, that's true. So in terms of actual calendar timelines, if we put our application in early next year after our PFS, the panel's got 6 months to make that recommendation. So we expect about this time next year we'll have that decision. We would have done our financing, ready to push the button, so we could have buckets in the ground before the end of 2025, probably third quarter 2025. And just to be clear, that'll be just small works just to set up the scene so that we can control our water discharge if it happens to rain. It's a very dry area. Set up our roading before we start things in anger. That's a timeline of probably at least a year, meaning that potentially end of 2026 we could be pouring gold, but that's detail that will come out in the PFS.
Okay, cool. What are the risks facing this project? You know, what keeps you up at night? That timeline looks nice, looks good. What are the risks that investors and you should be thinking about?
Risk? Everything's a risk in mining, and we're managing that every day, either financial, geological, mining, community relations. It's every day. So we just got to make sure my people are well resourced, they're confident, if they need something that they get it, and that we respond to community concerns or anybody's concerns.
So I guess in my mind I can sort of think of two fairly large risks. One would be cost blowouts. We've seen a lot of that over the past few years. Even if the gold price stays where it is, what's the chances that the cost of pulling it out of the ground just ends up being more than you expect?
It's record gold prices. In terms of cost escalation, we've seen those costs plateau out across most industries, but particularly in the mining industry, that's definitely happened. I guess along those lines, obviously the workforce, where they're going to come from, is still a bit of an unknown. But again, a fantastic project. It's going to attract the best, and a fantastic place to live. I think these are all positives that some of those risks are mitigated.
So we talked about the environmental effects, but there's also a community surrounding this area, local iwi, people who just live there. What do they think of the mine going in next door? What consultation have you had with them?
Oh, look, in terms of iwi, we've been in contact with them since it was an exploration project only. Since I joined, we've been very exhaustive in our contact, particularly through their consultancy arm for the RMA, Alcaja, based in Dunedin, to bring them up to speed that, hey, we've found something and it's definitely worth putting a bit of effort in here. So we have regular catch-ups with that group. We have other touch points with mana whenua throughout the Runanga and Runanga down south. In terms of the community, we've been active with the local business South Chamber of Commerce, even hosted 80 people in Cromwell last night to really allow them a chance to understand what the project is and what it means for them as both individuals, for their families, but also for their businesses, with that obviously commercial bent to it. And then there's the more general groups, the societies, the Rotaract, the Lions, just to let them know, because they're all people who have a best keen to understand what that means to them and obviously to the environment. But of course, there's the people who will be directly affected by the project, whether it's through the traffic that will be accessed up into the mountains, or the thoughts about the water, where it's going to come on, what are we going to do with it, where is it going to go, how are we going to control our effects on the land. Those conversations have started, and as I said, we've got a lot more work to do, and ultimately we'll try and be as transparent as we can be. We've also got a certain amount of disclosure rules under the ASX we have to be mindful of. But I hope to have up a website in the coming month or so that the public can access and understand, hey, what are they doing for water monitoring? Well, there's the results. They can click on and see the results and see the certificates from the labs that have done the results.
And you talked about engaging with mana whenua. What sort of things are they interested in? What are they worried about?
I guess the flora and fauna. Taramia is somewhat prevalent at high altitudes. Not directly we were proposing our mine, but they wanted to see that protected. Water, the why, it's very important, as we know, and it's important to everyone, right?
I like drinking it.
And of course, it is a known pathway from the coastal communities into the Clutha or the Mata'ao in times past, particularly for food gathering and pathways to the west coast for Paenami. So those are all factors from a environment and historical point of view. But of course, this is an opportunity for mana whenua to take part in mining. Demographically, they make up a large proportion of Kiwis in the mining industry, or disproportionate. They're sort of 20%, 25% of workers in Australia. I've worked with a lot of Kiwis over there. And so they want, as Mr. Jones says, they want their sons and daughters and nephews and nieces to come back home and dig up New Zealand rather than Kalgoorlie. So definitely jobs, sustainable housing and building communities for their people, just like everyone else who wants the same thing.
Hey, thanks for coming in. Appreciate your time. Congratulations on the NZX listing. I hope things go well.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. It's a very exciting day and I'm looking forward to the future.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. You can watch Shared Lunch on YouTube or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a rating and a comment about what topic you might like to hear about next. Enjoy the rest of your week. See you next time.